democracy looks like.
This is what 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 democracy looks like.
It doesn't matter about black.
Okay, what's your name, sir?
My name is Ryan Indigo Warman.
Can you spell it?
RyanIndigo WARMAN.
And what is the name of the group you represent?
We are here with the 99% Coalition of San Francisco, coalition of civil rights leaders and activists.
Okay, why are you all here today?
We've been here speaking with the San Francisco Board of Supervisors regarding provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 that allow for the indefinite detention of United States citizens on American soil without access to due process, legal counsel, or even charges, based purely on suspicion, and with very vaguely worded language that we fear could be used against other civil rights leaders and activists fighting for social change here in America. This is part of the basic freedoms guaranteed to us by the Bill of Rights and the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution also forbids the United States military from being deployed domestically, and the Bill of Rights guarantees due process and access to legal counsel for all United States citizens. This act is stripping away our civil liberties, and we are presented a resolution to the Board of Supervisors that has been crafted by the Bill of Rights Defense Committee that would call for a guarantee of due process for San Francisco citizens. It has already been passed by the Fairfax City Council and by Northampton, Massachusetts, and we're very pleased to have received, for the most part, a warm welcome from the aides and staff of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and we're also very pleased that there seems to be strong support for passing this resolution on the Board of Supervisors for San Francisco to become the first major U.S. city to speak out against this erosion of our civil liberties.
So this law goes into effect tomorrow?
This law goes into effect tomorrow. It was signed on November 31st. It has passed both houses of the United States legislature, and many legislators have expressed concern over the detention provisions and have met with fierce resistance from other more conservative elements of the Congress and Senate, including Senators Levin and McCain, who drafted the resolution that was passed.
Anything else you want to add?
We'd like to encourage all citizens to educate themselves about NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, particularly sections 1021 and 1022, which provide for your indefinite detention based on mere suspicion of wrongdoing.
How's that?
So I'm really disappointed you didn't take it into the supervisor. I know. We did. We just didn't sign it. Or the both are. Going to start?
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. This is the San Francisco 99% Coalition. We're here today to talk about the National Defense Authorization Act and its deleterious impact on the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. We have spent the morning lobbying members of the Board of Supervisors, and we also have a few speakers who want to state their opinion about the National Defense Authorization Act and its bad effects. So thank you all for coming. Our first speaker is Ryan Indigo Warren. Our first speaker is Ryan Indigo Warren, and he's going to give a report back on our visit with the staff of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Art, and thank you to the 99% Coalition of San Francisco for organizing this event and for welcoming me into your ranks. I'm deeply concerned about the detention provisions in the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. It is a complete erosion and stripping away of our civil liberties. It authorizes the United States military to be deployed domestically, which is expressly forbidden by the U.S. Constitution, and it also deprives American citizens of our rights to legal counsel, due process, and habeas corpus, which is not being held without charges. It is literally a roundup black bag detention act that could, the way it's written now, be interpreted against other civil rights groups, labor leaders, and activists such as ourselves fighting for social change. We are not terrorists, we are freedom fighters, we are Americans, and we are here to speak out against this blatant violation of the very principles that this country was founded upon. And we will not rest until this act receives the national media attention that it deserves. And we're very pleased to have received a warm reception from the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, aides, and staff. And it appears that there is strong support for this resolution to be passed by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. And for San Francisco to join Fairfax, California and Northampton, Massachusetts as the first major U.S. city to pass a resolution opposing the detention provisions of the NDAA. And as our former governor has said, we will be back, and we will be working with the Board of Supervisors to pass this resolution at the city level, and then on to Sacramento for a state level resolution. Thank you, Indigo. Our next speaker is Janet Wheel of Code Pink. Janet Wheel is a member of Code Pink. It's a woman-initiated grassroots peace and justice social movement working to end U.S.-funded wars and occupations, to challenge militarism globally, and to redirect our resources into life-affirming activities. Janet has been a member of Code Pink since 2003, and she's ready to speak right now.
Thank you, Art, and thank you, San Francisco 99% Coalition. Code Pink has pissed off a lot of people over the past 9.5 years. Code Pinkers have disrupted, I call it supplemented, congressional hearings, courtroom proceedings, fundraisers and book signings, speeches by Presidents Bush and Obama, including at Obama's fundraiser in New York City yesterday, and more. We've challenged the authors of the torture memos and called for their arrest. We've bird-dogged elected officials and candidates who wanted to stay silent on U.S. wars. Over the years, Code Pink has stood in solidarity with our supposed enemies. We've raised $650,000 for traumatized Iraqis after the two horrific U.S. attacks on Fallujah in 2004. Some of us have traveled to Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Jordan, Gaza, Egypt, Bahrain, and yes, Guantanamo, to break through government propaganda and bring stories from real people back to the United States. We call for an end to the U.S. war on Afghanistan. We call for an end to U.S. support for the Israeli occupation. We call for no war on Iran. And we protest the vast amounts of money spent on wars in the military, including the $662 billion in this 2012 National so-called Defense Authorization Act, instead of on human needs. We do these things because the voice of the people, including our weary disgust with endless wars, is increasingly shut out of an ever more corrupt, security-obsessed, and remote federal government. This includes California's so-called liberal Democrats, Boxer, Feinstein, and Pelosi, who all voted for this 2012 NDAA. As has just been said, the indefinite detention provisions of the NDAA could be used against Code Pink and other activists and others, especially Muslim and or Arab U.S. citizens who stand in solidarity with people in countries considered official enemies. The text authorizes military tribunal or transfer to the custody or control of the person's country of origin, or transfer to any other foreign country or any other foreign entity. This includes Guantanamo. And yes, these provisions can include U.S. citizens, even though, quote, I want to clarify that my administration will not authorize the indefinite military detention without trial of American citizens. Obama reassured us in a legally meaningless signing statement as he signed the 2012 NDAA. We will not shut up, and we will not be shut down. Our rights are not, quote, given to us, and they do not depend on legislation nor official statements, much less the gracious reassurance of whoever happens to be president. Our rights are inherent in our human identity and dignity. Rights become realities when we fight for and use them. Like muscles, they grow stronger with exercise. The love of freedom is stronger than fear.
Thanks, Janet. Our next speaker is Noor Shamos. He's an immigration attorney with the Arab Resource and Organizing Center. It's a grassroots organization working to empower and organize the Arab community toward justice and self-determination for all. He was born in Lebanon and came to the United States when he was 9 years old. He attended UC San Diego, earned a BA in political science. And while at UCSD, he was vice president and then president of the Arab Student Union. He graduated cum laude from Thomas Jefferson School of Law. Noor Shamos.
Thank you for inviting me to speak here. My name is Noor Shamos. I'm the immigration attorney at the Arab Resource and Organizing Center. We are an organization that works largely with members of the Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, and South Asian communities. And those are communities especially affected by a lot of these legislations, especially post-9/11 legislations. Communities that have been especially targeted by federal agencies. Unfortunately, sometimes in coordination with local law enforcement. I was actually here yesterday at a City Hall Public Safety Committee hearing where we were discussing the passing of the new San Francisco Civil Rights Ordinance, and we think all these issues are actually connected because they are essentially targeting members of our communities. As an attorney with such an organization, I hear from a lot of our members complaints about and fears and apprehensions about being targeted by FBI investigations, interrogations. A lot of these people are immigrants. They come here and they apply for some sort of immigration relief. A lot of them are asylum applicants, and they are placed under FBI interrogation or further FBI processing for reasons unknown to them. And due to that, it makes us very, very fearful and apprehensive when we hear of such legislation being passed, because we have no idea who's going to be targeted by this legislation. Someone can get arrested and be placed in indefinite detention. We have no way of even knowing what sort of evidence led them to these accusations. I happen to be originally from Lebanon and Syria, a country that has actually been receiving a lot of coverage recently in the mainstream media. And I can tell you, when one of our countries of origin receives such coverage in the mainstream media, it starts to make us a little nervous. That's what I have to say here. We are completely against this sort of legislation that can do nothing to increase safety and security for our citizens, but can do everything to have a chilling effect on all our citizens and to intimidate members of our communities into not being able to practice their constitutionally protected rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor. Our next speaker is Richard Becker. He's the Western Regional Coordinator of ANSWER, which stands for Act Now to Stop War and End Racism, also known as International Answer and Answer Coalition. It was formed in the wake of the September 11th attacks and has since helped to organize many of the largest anti-war demonstrations in the United States, including demonstrations with hundreds of thousands against the Iraq War. Richard Becker.
Are we on? Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation to speak here today. And I would echo a little bit what Noor just said, because I think who is likely to be the target, the real, in the most immediate sense, this applies to everyone, but we know who's been being targeted. It's people from the Muslim community, the Arab community, and we have to stand as strongly as we possibly can with our sisters and brothers in the Arab American and Muslim communities against this kind of repression. You know, it's amazing when you hear all the talk from the politicians about big government and what they don't mean when they say big government. Because they don't mean the Pentagon, they don't mean the FBI, the National Security Agency, the Bureau of Homeland Security, etc., etc., etc. All the myriad, thousands of police forces, the prison system, the court system that really is a form of the rich practicing injustice against the poor. None of that counts when they talk about big government. When the right-wingers and increasingly the liberals go along with that idea. And so now we have this bill, this atrocious act, the National Defense so-called, because it's not about defense at all, Authorization Act, which provides in it $662 billion for the Pentagon. But that will only really amount to about half of the actual military spending in the next year when you really go through the budget. And in addition, taking away the rights of people that people have been fighting for long before the existence of the United States. So we have, on the one hand, the right wing pushing this through, and on the other hand, we have, you know, the so-called Friends of the People, the Democratic Party, virtually every single one of them, and in fact, when it comes to the military budget, every single one of them, year in and year out, votes for it. Year in and year out. And then they have the nerve to turn around after they pass this particularly atrocious piece of legislation that attacks the rights of the people, the most basic and fundamental rights, and tell us, oh, we'd like to overturn part of that. I mean, what hypocrisy. What utter hypocrisy. And so we know this, that it's only going to be when the people are organized to take action in our interest that real change is going to come about, and this is going to get overturned, and a lot of other things are going to get overturned, and we're going to stop the wars, and stop racism, and stop everything else that's wrong here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I just want to say that this NDAA is an attack on not just American citizens, but on everybody. This is, you know, the people are defined in our Bill of Rights. They're without distinction as to citizen. It's persons, all persons, and this is echoed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We might get to some of those quotes later in the hour. Our next speaker is Father Louis Vitale, a Franciscan priest. Father Louis Vitale is an Air Force veteran, former pastor of St. Boniface Catholic Church, and longtime peace activist. He has spent many months in federal prisons on behalf of peace and justice. Father Vitale.
Hello. It's really good to be here, and very exciting to see people are turning out against this kind of situation. We've gone through it before. Under Gonzales, when we had Gonzales as Attorney General, he was doing these terrible acts were coming out, and we went with Code Pink. We were over there we did a month out in front of the White House, and we finally got that somewhat shot down, but now they're coming up with this ridiculous bill. Well, I must admit that I skate a little bit on the edge myself, even though I'm a second generation U.S. born Californian veteran, you know, etc., etc. I do skate on the other side of the board, and people call me a traitor, etc. Just the last weekend, we were down at Ellsberg, myself, Code Pink people, we were down in Sidney Sheehan, etc. at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Vandenberg Air Force Base is perhaps the most heinous place in the world, because Dan Ellsberg insists that he knows more about nuclear bombs than anybody a person who will match himself in his knowledge. Incredibly accurate. He talked for 3 hours or 2 hours the night before on it, and insists that this is planning on nuclear annihilation of the world. I mean, it's just going to come, and it can happen right now with the Israeli situation. Israel has nuclear bombs, etc. So we went down there. We went to the base. We went on to the base. And a number of us, 16 of us, were arrested. Now, we're American citizens. Can we be, can they do anything to us? Yes. I mean, read these acts. Look at them, how they can twist things around and twist things around. Dan, who certainly knows more than anyone, I mean, he was hunted down. They were determined to wipe him off the face of the earth back in those early days when the Pentagon Papers came out, when he went down to all the charges they had on him, etc. And he was outraged at this thought that they could do this. Now, I have had a very, very good attorney for most of my actions, where I've got, 6 months or so in prison. Bill Quigley is a lawyer from Loyola Law School, but Bill Quigley has been our defender at School of the Americans and all that. But Bill Quigley, not only a brilliant legal professor, but he has also been, for the last couple of years, the head advocate for the Center of Constitutional Rights. Major one in charge of all of those people in Guantanamo Bay has come under him, and he's an invaluable person. But he's been able to take me and some of us pretty easily because, we're American citizens and all that, and he figures we're not probably going to get hung over it or whatever else. But then they made him in charge of all the ones at Guantanamo Bay, and he doesn't have the ability to bring them to court. And yet, right now, they can us, but with this, we're not so sure. So we all have to be concerned, but it only makes me, as the last speaker pointed out, I'll tell you just quickly one more story. I went to testify at the immigration for someone who I was pastor there at St. Boniface, right over on the hill, and this fellow wanted to marry this Egyptian woman, and he was Egyptian, I'm sorry, and he wanted to marry this Christian woman from Greece or someplace like that, and he was trying to get asylum, and because he said his own brother would kill him because he wanted to become a Christian and marry her. And so he said what happened, they wanted me to testify that he is truly becoming Catholic and attending the classes. So they held up the trial so I could come and testify, not just a letter or anything, testify that he was becoming Christian. That's it, under the reign of the Catholic Church. Well, as the little hearing went on, the prosecutor says, and now is it true, Brother Vitale, that last week, or 2 weeks ago, you were on the corner of such and such, and he's playing this tape of me criticizing how they were treating the Muslims, and making a big issue that I was obviously in league with the Muslims and the terrorist group and all of that sort of thing. So it shows how that could go, and it can happen to any of us. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Brother Vitale. Our next speaker is Amina Abid with CAIR, C-A-I-R. The CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations, is America's largest Muslim civil liberties advocacy organization and promotes human rights. CAIR presents an Islamic perspective on issues of importance to the American public and seeks to empower the American Muslim community and encourage its social and political activism. Amina has worked with Bay Area Muslim community in various capacities. Her passion now lies in protecting the civil liberties of her fellow American Muslims. Amina Abid.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for rallying together for such an important cause, especially the day before NDAA takes effect. Speaking on behalf of CAIR, we are very concerned for the effects of NDAA forthcoming. As it is, we see that the civil liberties of the Bay Area Muslim community, as well as nationally, is already really on the line. And we have a lot of cases where there's a lot of either FBI or people targeting the Muslim community with hate and discrimination. And so moving forward, the NDAA really just opens up even more opportunities for this to be to happen over and over again. As it is, we have a rate of at least one new FBI case per week, with the FBI targeting the Muslim community without warrant, without cause, really just purely by profiling, based on the fact that a citizen happens to be Muslim, happens to look Muslim, happens to look Arab, really just based on profiling without cause. And we've seen so many adverse effects within the Muslim community based on this social psycho effects, the loss of ability to really function within society based on all of these things. So we're very disappointed when NDAA was signed, and we hope that our leadership and the elected officials, as well as the community, will continue to rally together to have this overturned. And I thank you all again for coming together to speak on this.
Thanks, Amina. Our next speaker is Bob Miola from Courage to Resist. Bob is a commissioner and past chairperson of the Berkeley Peace and Justice Commission and a member of both the Courage to Resist Organizing Collective and the Bradley Manning Support Network Steering Committee. He is a member of the War Resisters League and has been involved in struggles for peace and justice since the 1960s. Bob Miola.
Thank you, Art. Thank you. First, I want to say, as a member of the Berkeley Peace and Justice Commission, I'm bringing a resolution to the Commission Monday night that, if passed, will go to the Berkeley City Council asking them to repeal the NDAA. And I want to say that Courage to Resist supports the troops who refuse to fight, and we are opposed to wars and empire, and for the repeal of the NDAA. Now, speaking for myself, it seems to me that Barack Obama, we know that Bush shredded the Constitution a decade ago, but it seems to me that Obama decided the pieces might not be tiny enough and wanted to do a little more and make sure that they couldn't be put back together again. The law he signed, as everybody is saying, means that just like the Salem witch trials, the president can point an accusing finger at anyone and say, I think that person supports a terrorist, so since we now have martial law, I'm sending a military officer to arrest them, and with no evidence and no due process and no trial, hold them forever, indefinite detention. The founders fought a bloody revolution, and they warned us against the dangers of banks, corporations, and standing armies, but they didn't want so-called redcoats coming to people's houses and doing exactly what Obama is now codifying into law. And Obama and every senator and every congressperson who voted for the NDA violated their oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. That's treason. They are traitors. They are domestic enemies of the people. They have nullified their right to hold office. They should be impeached, but they will not be impeached. And they should be arrested, tried, and imprisoned if found guilty. And it seems they're very guilty. This president already has a list of violations of the Constitution and law. His secret wars, his wars without congressional permission, his unilateral assassinations of Americans overseas, electronic surveillance, nationwide police repression. It's all orchestrated and organized. He's tortured Bradley Manning, and one of the reasons that Bradley Manning can't get a fair trial is because Obama has already declared Bradley Manning guilty. The system is way broken. Now is a time for nonviolent revolution in this country. It's nice to ask the people who created this law to repeal it, but to me that's not enough. We should cease cooperation with the federal government. The military must be educated not only to refuse illegal wars and illegal orders that they've needed to refuse so far, but now we have to educate them not to turn their guns on people in this country, not to arrest people in this country, just to refuse to arrest people. We need general strikes in the military and in the civilian population. We need ongoing strikes and occupations. It is time to shut down the empire. And I say nonviolent revolution for two reasons. If you're not a Gandhian pacifist, then strategically, please consider that you can't beat them at their game. They've got the weapons. They're good at that game. a peaceful transfer of power through non-cooperation and non-violent revolution. We can win that way.
Pat Grierson.
Thank you very much, Bob. Our next speaker is Pat Gray.
Wait a minute. I'm not done.
You go, girl.
Pat Gray is an elected member of the Leadership Council of the Justice Party of California. The Justice Party is founded on the principle of justice for all, social justice, civic justice, environmental justice, and economic justice for all, and not just for the wealthiest Americans and corporations. Pat Gray is a retired public school teacher and a San Mateo County-based political activist, and she's an active member of the San Francisco 99% Coalition. Pat Gray.
Hi. The members of the Justice Party think that our current government is not under the control of the Democrats and Republicans. We think there is no lesser evil. The Democrats and Republicans are not representing the voices of the people. The passage of NDAA is only one of many actions of our federal government of America that are unjust. He has this to say about, Rocky Anderson has this to say about NDAA, quote, "Many current elected officials seem to have little regard for due process as reflected in the outrageous NDAA provisions allowing for indefinite detention. We must act in every way to protect the rule of law, including due process. Due process is one of the most important features of free speech." Woo! Next.
Art.
I'm sorry. Okay. Good job, Pat. Short to the point, punchy. All right. So now our next speaker, I have not prepared any introductory remarks, but she's a member of the San Francisco 99% Coalition, and she's a really great person, a great activist, and she'll introduce herself a bit. Okay, Susan Harmon.
Hi, I'm also a member of Code Pink, as you can see by looking at what I'm wearing. And I'm carrying the evidence against me when they come for me in the middle of the night. This will be their evidence. It's a bottle of Palestinian olive oil. I bought it from Mecca, the Middle Eastern Children's Alliance. They use the funds from their sales of olive oil to bring clean water to Gaza. Gaza, as you may know, is under the control of Hamas, a democratically elected government, and Hamas has been declared by the United States a terrorist organization. So, when I bought this bottle of olive oil and gave the money to Mecca, Mecca used it in Gaza, and Gaza is run by a terrorist organization, the government says, so I assume this is material support for terrorism.
Oh boy.
This is the evidence against me, so when I disappear, it will be because of this olive oil. Thank you.
Okay, we're almost finished here. I do want to say that again, as Indigo mentioned, we did visit the members of the Board of Supervisors staffs this morning, and if you leave here and you think of what you want to do, one of the things you can do if you live in San Francisco, call your member of the Board of Supervisors and say to them that you are very outraged by the NDAA and its impact on civil liberties, and you'd like the board to do something, and that something could be getting a resolution going, such as the one we have initiated with them today, which would be a non-cooperation with any federal officials that attempt to diminish the civil liberties of any San Franciscan. And if you're from another city, do that in the other city. We are also going to talk about, we want to end with a few words that come from a document we all respect a lot, the Bill of Rights. And I'm going to call upon Janet Wheel to come up and recite those with me. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, and Dolores reminds me that please check out the San Francisco 99% Coalition's website, www.sf99%spelledout.org. Art and I will now read from the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments, the amendments of the Constitution that the National Defense Authorization Act most clearly violates. 4th Amendment, protection from unreasonable search and seizure. The right of the people to be secure in their persons against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. 5th Amendment, due process. Nor shall any person be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. 6th Amendment, trial by jury and rights of the accused. Confrontation clause, speedy trial, public trial, right to counsel. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense.
This is what we're fighting for, the Bill of Rights. It's a positive struggle. We're not just against the NDAA, we are for the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and the International Declaration of Human Rights, for that matter. So please check out the website of SF 99% Coalition. Look at your foundational documents, as we just mentioned, and please stay active. Thank you all the speakers and everybody for coming today. We really appreciate it.
Democracy looks like.
This is what 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 democracy